So hi everyone and welcome to this webinar with a very long and complicated title, Innovative Ways of Visual Digitalization of Your Customer Interactions. So it's going to be me, Fredrik Lemming, presenting this together with my colleague Jonas Fogelberg, and we will take turns in presenting different sections of this webinar. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about the corona trends and touch upon some trends that have affected how we are interacting and engaging with peers, colleagues, and most important of all, between companies and customers. And we're also going to touch base on meeting strategies that we are advocating for and is commonly put in practice here in the Nordics and most likely in Germany as well. And take a step back and look into what is really important to make this happen. And then we're going to look at some telling customer cases. It's going to be 6 of them that really tries to show different ways of visual communication that adds sort of dimensions to the interaction that you normally are conducting with your customers. And then at the end, we do a short summary and some key takeaways. So let's start with the corona trends. And I bet that if I would have shown you this photo 4 months ago, none of you would have understood what this is all about. But now everyone pretty much understands and know what this is. This is the bug or the virus that has put the globe in some kind of lockdown mode or a pandemic mode. And we have learned a lot of things from this. And one of the things that at least we have been taught here in Sweden and in Europe is to practice social distancing. But that is something that is not new. Already in the Beijing Olympic Games, Usain Bolt practiced that, and he won 100 meters with more than 2 meters ahead of the rest of the competition. So, so leaving the jokes beside, the thing here is then when you are practicing social distancing, you know, life needs to go on as normal as it can be. And one effect of that, trying to mitigate the need to interact and meet each other, not just over the phone, is this. The usage of meeting services has rocketed, and there's been almost more than an exponential growth in the usage. And that is trying to basically bring people together and closer, even though we're working from home or from different continents and countries. So what have we learned from this? Well, I will come back to that later. But another thing that is sparking innovations is crisis in general. And there's a website that is called COVID Innovations. And a month ago, there were more like than 800 different innovations. And you can go in here and you can look at innovations based on different industries. And a lot of them are revolving around meeting services and how you can facilitate that more easily, and etc., etc. But the point here is that when you are doing something differently, then immediately people are identifying gaps, voids that are not fulfilled with what you're doing after the change. And hence, you create innovations. And some innovations that I will touch upon are related to engaging in these distance meeting when you're sitting and not meeting someone face to face. And I will give you one example. The first example is this app. It's called Soundboard. And basically what it does, you download this app and you bring it to your home office where you're sitting by yourself. And the app plays sounds as if you were at the office, coffee machines, colleagues talking, printing, etc. All these offices noises. And you would imagine, why are people doing innovations around this? Yeah, I think the simple answer to that is that the traditional digital meeting that we are having today is kind of one-dimensional. You're missing a dimension. It will never compensate for a face-to-face meeting. Hence, there's a void, there's a gap, there's something to need to be mitigated. And here's one solution. Will it fly? I don't know. But it really shows that if we are too technical, we're going to miss out an important part of the customer experience. And we don't have to travel that far. We will leave the home office and we will talk about this. soccer games, soccer leagues are opening up all around the world at the moment, but there's no fans attending, no supporters. So the atmosphere is, the players are the same. They are as skilled as before, but the atmosphere is completely different. And so we're missing some dimensions in the game. And then Yamaha tried to mitigate that by installing sound systems that are connected to apps, and it's called remote share. And then you as a fan, a supporter, can in real time sit there and look at the game from a distance, and then you can interact with the game by pressing shout, clap, boo, etc., etc. So trying to compensate for the lack of real-time audience and trying to digitalize the experience. And all of this is following the same common denominator, that when there's a void, when there's a gap, when we do something differently, we need to think about not being too one-dimensional. So I will leave that now and leave the corona trends with the summary that we need to really think that new technology brings new possibilities, but also we can't forget about sort of the reality that a face-to-face meeting is often the best meeting. So we need to put that into a context, and this is the strategy for customer service that are commonly adopted in the Nordics, and also the strategy that we are advocating for. It's based on a three-pillar approach: keep customer in self-service, and optimize contact center, and remove root cause for interactions. And often we are saying that it's your target to a better customer experience. And common pain points in this is that the self-service and information is insufficient and hard to find, or when it comes to remote root cause for interaction, we want to know what is going on, we have the data, but no efficient way to gain actionable insights. And when it comes to optimized contact center, it takes time to train agents, information knowledge not easily available. But there's often a big confusion here, because a lot of these initiatives are driven from an inside-out perspective. Companies are deploying self-service applications, chatbots, etc., not to boost the customer experience, but to save money. And there will be no customers that are willing to help us save money unless it's a better customer experience for them. So often, if we are thinking from the inside out, we need to change and replace customer experience to company experience. We need to understand what customers want. And this is one way to illustrate how customers are thinking, and different way we can approach and mitigate their need. So a lot of customers are willing to be in the self-reliance zone. And that is a notion of, I can do it myself. Often simple tasks, it's on their terms and conditions, is 24/7, and there's different applications that can cater for a good experience. And if we fail to provide good self-service application here, the customer will move on, and most of them are susceptible to this assisted zone, where they are more like, let's do it together. I was almost done and I could almost do it myself, but I couldn't figure it out. So if you can help me, maybe I can learn and I can go back again next time to the self-reliance zone, or I can fix it here in let's do it together. And that could be for simple task and medium task. And then we could have a strategy. If we know that these tasks are complex already in the start, we need to drive the customer to the live zone, which is I do it for you. And basically, there's a great acceptance to be in the self-reliance zone. With that said, we need to understand that and think about this from an outside-in perspective. And then suddenly we could have this customer experience in the center of everything. And what is needed to produce a very good self-service application? Well, I think today we need to use AI for that. And it's all about knowledge and conversation, to provide the right knowledge in the self-service channel and to provide a very good sort of self-service application. And often that revolves around using conversational AI to cater for that. And if we are serious about this, when it comes to remove root cause for interaction, we need to use AI to manage all the data and get access to actionable insights, so we can really drive change instead of doing the manual labor, and invest in that. And when it comes to optimized contact center, well, agents are dependent on knowledge as well, just as the customers, and they should have access to the same knowledge but maybe more descriptable when an agent is accessing that because they know more. And agent assistants, chaperones, butlers that are serving the agents to make their life easier. And the good thing here is that when you are combining all of these interactions together, they are feeding themselves like a closed loop, and it's an iterative loop. So knowledge and conversation is a perfect ground for doing analysis and drawing insights from all the interaction, identifying voids and gaps where you could update sort of strategies for agent assistant and knowledge bases, and all those knowledges are feeding the conversational engines, making them much, much smarter. So with that said, we will look at some telling examples on how we could combine some of these insights and strategies into a better customer engagement and really use the visual part of the interaction. So now I will hand over to Jonas, who will tell us about the first case. So welcome, Jonas.
Thank you, Fredrik. Jonas Hågeberg here. Okay, I have worked with some of our customers and tell you some of the cases here that are really interesting. And we will begin with the Swedish police force. And here in Sweden, you can of course dial 112 if it's an emergency, but there is also a number for non-urgent matters. And when you dial that number, you can speak to this conversational IVR and talk about what you need, and you will be transferred to an agent with that kind of knowledge. But now in Corona times, the Swedish police force was swamped with calls, and we helped them to set up a feature where we could actually identify someone needing assistance regarding Corona questions. And as we can see here in the graph, in that case, we offered them a link where when you click the link, you got extensive information on Corona in a smart FAQ. And 48% of the inbound calls regarding Corona was handled this way. And as you can imagine, this was a huge cost savings compared to hiring more live agents for the Swedish police force. And they are answering questions in this smart FAQ regarding travel restrictions now when it comes to Corona, border control between countries, and also questions about public gatherings, how many people can meet up, etc., and so on. So the other matters, as I mentioned, are handled by live agents. And a quick look how this looks. So if I dial this number 114 and I say something about Corona, or I can also press a menu choice for Corona questions, I will be presented with a link. This is in Swedish, but I get a link to my phone, and when I click that link, I see questions and answers in this smart FAQ about the coronavirus. And if I pick the top one, I can see whatever I need to know here. So this is a very simple way of deflecting calls and promoting self-services in an innovative way, because people are lazy, at least here in Sweden. They follow their usual habits of just picking up the phone and dial. They don't imagine that they could find the answer on the police website, for example. And the self-service, it's of course available 24/7. There are no queues. Well, it. So the key here is to provide a service that's very easy to use and provides the information that people want. And seeing that figure of 48% of people happy with this type of service is really the proof. So this is not a rocket science. It's easy to implement. So if you haven't done this in your own organization, let's do it tomorrow. So Fredrik, on to the second case.
And this is a good example, by the way, Jonas, about trying to bring back the customer to the self-reliance zone that we were talking about.
Good example, yes.
So the next example I will talk about is contact center connected elevators. And here is just the elevator, an example of what you can do by this. And you can imagine the situation: you are in an elevator and suddenly there's a problem. So you need to call the alarm operator, you need to call assistance. And then you will end up with a couple of maybe challenging questions, because first of all, you might not really know the address where you are. And then if it's a big office space, you need to tell the operator if it's in the north or the south part of the building. And in there, maybe you need to tell them which elevator you are in. And often you don't know any of these questions. So, and you don't even know the problem or any error codes. So what we have done here is basically a 4-step approach. And it all revolves around the customer using their mobile phone and scanning a QR barcode. In that way, the customer don't need to understand and know the phone number. The phone will dial the number itself, because the barcode, the QR code, contains metadata with phone numbers, address, elevator ID, when it was last serviced, and a lot of other things. And that information is taken into the routing algorithms, in this case for the flagship offering that we are having here at Telia. It's called Telia Ace. And that is used to determine how these interactions should be routed. And then it could be routed either using the phone as the voice channel, or it could sort of kickstart a video session. And the good thing here is that the customer don't have to do anything. If it wants to, the video will self-start in their mobile phone. So here I would say the key takeaway from this: it needs to be effortless, and it needs to be seamless, and it needs to be very easy for the customer to use. And then it's up to you also to use your imagination, how you can use this QR codes approach to make life much easier when you are interacting with your customers.
Yeah, and in all smartphones today, if you see a QR code anywhere, like in the elevator here, you just point your camera to it and everything works automatically. So that's how every modern smartphone works today. So it can't be simpler. Or turn on the camera, look at the QR code, and your things start to happen.
Or more effortless.
Very effortless.
So, okay, I will leave this example, and I will hand it to you, Jonas. And we will step back in time. We will move from elevators to something else.
Yes. Let's go back like more than 200 years to the Napoleonic Wars. And this case is from the healthcare sector, because, on the battlefield, after the battle came something called the triage. Triage comes from the French word trier, which means to sort. And on the battlefield, they decided, number one, will you survive without intensive care and you can wait to be treated? Good. Or are you a number two, you need immediate and intensive care to survive? Or number three, will you die regardless if you receive intensive care or not? And this is done on the battlefield even today, of course. And today we continue to sort and triage, but we do it digitally. So I'm going to show you a quick case here driven by innovation in the private sector, in healthcare companies here in the Nordic region, and they are also expanding into Europe. So this is how it works. Today, if you have a problem, you call the healthcare, you are sent a link, similar to the one we saw at the police case, and here you open and fill out your medical history and your current symptoms. And after that, there is an algorithm which is based on artificial intelligence, and that is doing the triage. So you will be directed either to self-care or to an online visit or to a physical visit, or if it's a real emergency, you dial 112, of course. So for society as a whole, this also has monetary gains, because if you look at what does it cost really, if you drive to the emergency room whenever you have some problem, it will cost the society around 300 euros. So of course, it's better to do a triage and see that, okay, this can be handled by yourself as a self-care advice, or we could do an online visit with chat or video. So this has really exploded also, this type of services here in Sweden. So here we can see how many online visits we have per month from 2016 and last year. And if we look at Stockholm region, especially for the first quarter here, the increase of these services was 620%, and that is of course also driven by Corona. It's simple and effortless to do this type of services. So let's look at a quick example of this, how it can look. So this is in Swedish. Okay, I'm being instructed to do an online visit. I'm in queue, and now there's a doctor here that's going to help me. And of course, these types of visits go very quick. In this case, this guy shows he has some problem with his arm here. He's showing, and he can of course switch the camera and make it easier for the doctor to see what the problem really is. So this is what it looks like when you're running these type of services. And to summarize other benefits that we have seen with these type of services, that many patients are disabled, and that they often have problems transporting themselves to the hospital for regular checkups. It usually takes an entire day for a single visit. So they of course, patients are very happy to do this online instead. And one final findings that is really interesting is when we have done these surveys is that there is a psychological effect here. People say that they feel more comfortable talking in the privacy of their own home. So there are several benefits with these type of services. Okay, over to you, Fredrik.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, you can access this service either by the app or on the website, of course. And now we'll talk about something completely different. It's an insurance company, and they are doing, among other things, financial advisory. And they wanted to digitalize the engagement, and not necessarily to share video so they could see each other. For them, it was very important to do screen sharing because they wanted to share the documents. Skandia wanted to show the customers the documents that they were talking about. And they tried out with Skype, but they said, it failed big time. They had quality problems. 50% of the session couldn't be performed due to, among other things, downloading software was complicated for the end customer. They didn't come prepared, and it didn't have a real-time experience. They were lagging when they were changing documents. They needed constant to say, can you see my documents? They were starting talking about something, and the customer couldn't see what they were presenting. So they asked us at Telia, Mr. Gates can't provide us with a good sort of screen sharing service. Can you help us? And then we said in prompt style, yes, we can. And what we did for Skandia is that they are, in this example, they're also working with Telia Ace. So the agents are working with two screens. So one screen where they are using the classical contact center applications, and the other screen was the screen sharing screen. So they knew what screen was to become shared, so they couldn't mix confidential information. And then the customer logged into the website, and then the screen sharing session started. And there was some complexity here because Skandia has a policy. They never send out any links over SMS or email. So if you receive an SMS or a link from Skandia, don't press it. It will not come from them. It's someone trying to do phishing activities. So what we came up with was that we're generating a unique code for each session, and then we are asking the customer to go to a specific website on skandia.se and enter this code there, and then the screen sharing session starts. And the outcome here is they improved the customer experience. It was suddenly easy, it never failed. Shorter advisory sessions because they could get started, never have to hassle to set up the meetings and setting all the parameters. And since the advisory sessions were shorter, they could have more advisory sessions. So a really win-win-win situation, both from a company perspective, from a customer perspective, and from a customer experience perspective. And now we will move from one insurance company to another, Jonas.
Yes. So we have two more customer cases. This is one of the biggest insurance companies in Sweden, Trygg-Hansa, and they identified certain processes that were complicated, they were expensive, they were time-consuming, and the customer experience ratings were really poor. And the case was you crash your car. That's a trauma for any driver, of course. So they saw that in that case, for many type of vehicle damages, an inspector from Trygg-Hansa insurance company needed to travel to the workshops to inspect and assess the damage. And the opportunity here was, of course, to simplify and try to improve, find a new way of working. And so how can we do this smarter? Well, every driver has a smartphone, of course, with them. So either when they have crashed a car or managed to get perhaps back home, they could actually use that together with the inspector. So this is no rocket science either, but here in this case, the insurance inspector and the driver can inspect the car remotely, and the inspector guides the owner, okay, show me your car, okay, turn left. So it's done live in real time. And this is also, of course, recorded as sort of evidence of the damages. So this saved a lot of time for both the inspector and the driver using a contact center platform to do this type of task. Okay, before the last session here, we've seen a couple of customer cases where visual communications makes a difference. But it seems interesting. We have also looked at some data here for the Nordic region, and we've seen that the interactions when it comes to customer cares in all other industries during Corona has really increased. Figures between 15 to 500% increase in inbound calls. And for those working with chats, they've seen everything from 30% increase to 1200% increase of chats here in our region of the world. So to be able to handle these peaks, we have to think in totally new ways, using technology and smarter ways of working. But in the end, it's not all about technology, Fredrik, right?
No, that's true. And that's why we will round off this session with a case from our own fighting brand. It's called Halebop, and it revolves around customer satisfaction. And to cut a long story short, Halebop, like every one of you, are constantly looking into feedback from customers. And this is the NPS result that they were receiving. And they were not happy with this, even though it's a fantastic NPS result, but they were not happy. They had aspirations for more. So when they were looking into feedback from customers said, well, you are poor, you deliver poor quality. And by the way, Halebop are not available over the phone. They are a digital customer service. It's a fighting brand, it's a low brand, and it comes with that. And they said a lot of comments like, Agent John, in your customer service sucks. And you act very much like robots when we are interacting with you, and you are so squared, meaning you are so traditional and you're not flexible. So what I will talk about here is the comments that we received about being robotic. And when we were chatting with our customers, in order to boost productivity from an inside-out perspective, we used canned responses. I mean, pre-written texts. And then we were in the chat conversations, we tried to act as we didn't have canned responses. So we produced answers that were too long and too complicated and too fast. So customers realized that, hey, you haven't been writing this in real time, and the tonality isn't in line with what you have written before. So you are acting like a robot, and I can't really see the human behind you. Are you trying to fool me? So when the customers were calling us, we failed. So we picked up on that and changed strategy and said, before sending out the canned response, we will inform the customer, now I will send you a canned response that will respond to your question. And then of course we did a lot of other things, and we did that in December, and you could already see the result just by not trying to fool the customer that you are better than you are, and just being very transparent on what you're doing. It has an effect of customer satisfaction. It boils down to these fundamental principles that, you know, be honest, be transparent, and don't try to fool the customer, and then everything will take a better turn from that. And after that, we received more positive feedback on everything else. So now, Jonas, it's, I think, time with this example to keep customers and agents in mind to do a short key takeaway.
Yes. So what we've heard today, would like to summarize with 4 key takeaways. And I think the most important one today, the lesson learned, is to make these type of services effortless, seamless, and intuitive. I think we've seen several examples of that, Fredrik. And we've also seen that video and mobile apps, of course, adds value, especially in this time of Corona times. And but it's not just about video. I mean, the visual potential, we've seen several different cases here of what you can do. So don't focus just on video. It's one of the channels you should use. And as Fredrik said, in the end, I mean, with all this technology, that's good, but it's all about people in the end, both the customer and, of course, the agents serving these customers. So never forget that.
And with that, we say thank you. And if you do have any questions now, we are happy to answer them. Otherwise, you could send us an email, and we will respond to that as fast as we can. So we open up for questions.